February meeting, and February is a busy month for us. I'm going to ask Paul Ellis to deliver our invocation. After that, I'll ask Commissioner Flanagan to lead us in the pledge, and we'll get started. And thank y'all for being here tonight.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Sorry.
Heavenly Father, we come before your throne of grace, giving thanks for all the blessings you've given to each of us. We thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to live freely in our beautiful town. But most of all, we thank you for sending your Son so that we had the opportunity to spend eternity in your presence. Bless those in our community who are sick and suffering in a mighty and powerful way. Now, as we enter the time to attend the affairs of our town, we ask that you provide our elected officials with the wisdom to make good decisions that may affect all of us. May each word spoken and action taken be pleasing in your sight. It is in your Son's precious name that we humbly pray. Amen.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan.
Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance to Greg. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. And again, thank you for being here. We have citizen comments. Amy, did anybody sign? Okay, if you didn't sign, you'll have an opportunity a little later on to ask any questions of anything that you hear here tonight, so feel free to do that. That brings us down to the town manager's comments. Mr. Hodgkins?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick comments. Street paving, still working on the annual streets resurfacing project. I would say it's substantially complete. I did not double check that with Wes this morning, but I assume it's pretty much wrapped up, except I think there's one area that we're still waiting on. Electric customer survey. That survey form is complete. It should begin going out to town electric customers probably in about a week or so. I need to check on the schedule on that, but it's done. I know that. And they're going to start sending that out in paper and in email form if we have their email address. Cast iron water line project, that's the one thing that's been sort of tearing everything up around Wilson Street and Walnut Street. Construction is continuing on the water line replacement project. Runs from downtown, the downtown storage tank over to Walnut Street, then out Belcher Street to Park Drive. So they have made their street cuts and things right around Walnut Street and Wilson Street, which you noticed last week. We had some issues with some water in some areas of the downtown area as far as discoloration, but that's being flushed out. According to the engineer, the project's about 30% complete, and they have to be substantially completed by June 26th. Then one last thing that sort of you haven't heard me talk about, we're just having some initial discussions, but our town logo is not protected. It's not trademarked. We have resisted encroachments from a couple well-meaning local businesses that tried to sort of use it. And so they backed off once we pointed out that it was, not just fair game. So we have had initial discussions with an attorney that specializes in intellectual properties protection. And so we had an initial conversation with him last week, and to keep it from unauthorized use and commercialization. So we'll have more on that later, but we've just at least started that discussion. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Any questions of the town manager? Next item is the financial report. You have that in your book. Jay will be here to tell us more about that in a few minutes. But anybody have any questions of Amy at this time? Any questions? Seeing none, that'll bring us down to changes, additions, and deletions to the agenda. Are there any changes, or is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Dr. Hobbs has made a motion. Board, you've heard it. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down to a proclamation of African American History Month. And normally, I would just ask y'all to read it and we move forward. But I'm going to ask you to stand with me as I read this, because not only is it an honor, but it's an incredible privilege to be able to read this tonight in my hometown. If you would join me, please, as I read this. And I do have new glasses, so Commissioner Evans may have to jump in here at any time. It says, African American History Month. Whereas much of Farmville's honor, strength, and stature can be attributed to the diversity of cultures and traditions that are celebrated by residents in this town, and whereas the African Americans have played a significant role in the economics, culture, spiritual, and political development of Farmville while working to maintain and promote their cultural and history, and whereas as a result of their determination, hard work, knowledge, and perseverance, African Americans have made valuable and lasting contributions to Farmville, Pitt County, and the great state of North Carolina, achieving success in all aspects of society, including business, education, politics, science, and the arts. And whereas in 1976, African American History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of African American history throughout our American experience and to serve to promote cultural enrichment, ethnic pride, self-esteem by celebrating the lives and contributions of great African Americans. And whereas during African American History Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the past successes and challenges of African Americans and look to the future to contribute to improved society so that we may live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. Now, therefore, I, John O. Moore, Mayor of Farmville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim February 2025 as African American History Month in Farmville and urge all citizens to join me in paying tribute to the struggles and accomplishments of African Americans and encourage appropriate programs and activities to honor the significant contributions of African Americans that have made in our town, state, and the nation. Dated 3rd day of February 2025. Thank y'all very much. The reason that's important to me is because a lot of dear friends of mine, and one, the great John Spruill, and I, on this very night, along with a couple of hundred more people from Farmville and Fremont, were in the Persian Gulf during the Gulf War. And I hope that in some way that this pays tribute to those fine folks. I also would like to say to a dear friend of mine that has been called home, but she had a park named after her, wonderful lady by the name of Beatrice May. And anybody that's been around any time, you'll know Beatrice May. She and I did the first African American History Month on television well over 30-some years ago, back in 1993, I think. And she would be very proud of this tonight. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next item. Items for consent. Board, you have that before you to approve the minutes and ordinance for temporary closing Main Street for the Dogwood Festival. Is there a motion that we accept the items of consent?
I'll make a motion we accept the items for consent as stated.
Commissioner Smith has made a motion that we accept the items of consent. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down for items for discussion. And this is one of the 2 report cards we get every year. The next one will come in August when we review what we said we were going to do at the February retreat. This is the first one. It is the presentation of the audit report. Jay Ferris. Jay, where are you? Where are you? Jay Parrish, you ready?
I'm ready.
The room is yours, sir.
Well, thank y'all for having us. I'm just here to help present. Carly and Amy really, have done all the work. We couldn't do your audit without the help of Amy and David, so we do appreciate the assistance. But this is your June 30th audit. We performed the audit back in December. We got the audit report submitted in January, and as of last Thursday, it is official. So it has been reviewed and approved by the local government commission. So I'm going to just hit the highlights. You all have a financial statement audit, which your opinion was unmodified, which that's the highest opinion you can receive. So your audit report is good. And because of some of the debt that you have a compliance audit in the back where we look at how you handle safeguards. And you had 2 small findings is all we've got in this audit. So you've got an audit where you've got a little bit of excess funds transferred from the electric fund, and during the year, the law changed on the required coverage for your finance officer. Historically, you've had a $50,000 bond, and it went up during the year. The law changed to make it be 10% of your budget. So instead of being $50,000, her bond coverage should have been up to almost $1 million. And that was a law change that happened mid-year, and you weren't aware of it. So, but that's been rectified at this point, or in the process of being changed. So
a lot of the towns and municipalities that we dealt with got caught with that. If you're not on the LGC listserv or really were looking for it, it was real easy for that law change to get out there and not catch it. So again, with an audit size of the town of Farmville, those are really the only two little findings that we have. I'm going to hit some of the highlights. I've just given you your full audit report tonight. And if you look through it and have any questions, we're available at any time. The first part of your presentation has just got a letter. That's just required communications from us to y'all. I'm not going to read this, but it just tells you that we had complete access to your books and records. We had all the assistance we needed from management. It just sort of covers some things that we're required to put in writing. So that's in there for you to read. We get into the charts, and the first thing we look at is, the town of Farmville consists of general fund, water fund, sewer fund, electric fund, and some other funds. We really, tonight, are just going to talk about your general fund, which covers the main operations of the town. And general fund balance is kind of what you hear. So you all have over $3.5 million of fund balance, and then some of it is reserved for particular purposes. So the difference is what you like to see. And you'll see your fund balance has gone down a little bit this year. Your fund balance is 27.7%, down from 35. Historically, 24% was the target. All my years, which is longer than I care to mention, it's been recommended that you try to have a minimum of 24. A year or so ago, they sort of changed that to be 32. So here you'll see your fund balance, you've dropped slightly from 35 to 27. Some of this doing has been intentional. You've got some ARPA funds here over the last few years. You've implemented some pay rate studies. You've done some renovations around. So you've done some things and spent some money intentionally. But where you are now is you're at 27.2%. One of the performance indicators that we're going to get to, which isn't a finding, is just a warning, sort of warning to you. Just look out, watch your fund balance, try to get it now. What I used to tell you was 24, now try to get it back to 32. And that's a recommendation. But this is your fund balance, 27.2. Your funds, the purple box is your general fund, and your general fund, that's how it operated. And then the blue funds are your enterprise, water, sewer, and electric combined. You have so much shared duties in your finance department, your town manager, your finance officer. A lot of administrative efforts are conducted in the general fund. So when you look at how it stands before it gets any money from the enterprise funds, it actually operates at a deficit. Then you transfer, you all have had a study done that tells you what each department's burden ought to be, and you come back and make a transfer to the general fund. So you'll see after transferring funds, you have been positive the last 2 years. This year, you're still a little bit negative. You had a $700,000 deficit in the general fund. Again, some of this planned items, implementing, you had a pay rate study done. I mean, you spent $300,000-$400,000 getting your salaries up to what the pay plan said. You've spent several $100,000 around on different things. But you did operate at a deficit in your general fund this year, even after the supplementary transfer from the enterprise funds. Your electric fund, this is just a 5-year trend. Again, it's a little bit above the line. And again, this is how it operated before it made its transfer to the general fund, then after paying its share of administrative expenses, it's still operated at a surplus. So your electric fund is in good shape. You got a couple of cash flow items that I'll make a comment on in a minute. Water fund operating above the line. Sewer fund. All right, sewer fund is not a good topic in many small towns, and it has been operating just a little bit above the line the last few years. This year, you actually, I think the last couple of years, you have omitted the transfer from the sewer fund to the general fund just to try to keep it above the line. This year, that transfer got made, so you did actually transfer some administrative expenses from the sewer fund to the general fund, and it caused it to be a little below the line. Fixed assets, you've got right at $70 million worth of assets and infrastructure and tanks and wells and streets and trucks. So this line represents the dollar value of assets that you got. The aqua line sort of tells you that about 25 million of it is useful life is used up, and then this purple box represents the cash available to replenish stuff. So, you know, your goal would be for the purple box to keep up with the green box, so as things are wearing out, you're replenishing cash, but you still have over $5 million, and it's not likely that, you know, this cash would keep up with that. But this is just interesting to see how many, you know, $70 million that y'all are responsible for and managing and keeping up. Your property tax rate's 49 cents per hundred. I think that's what it's been all the years I've been here, so I don't think you've had a property tax increase in a long time. And the purple box is the state average. Your collection percentage, 98.83. The town of Farmville, is 99.05. And 99.11, the state average was 98.83. So you're operating just a hair above the state average as far as collecting your property taxes. And what that means is that 99% of your taxes were collected as of June 30th. You know, they're billed in August. You've got till June before they're considered, you know, into your next year. So a 99% collection rate is very good. You have about $388 million worth of valuation that's generating about a $1.9 million levy when it comes to property taxes. So that's just a 5-year trend for you. So again, overall, your opinions are unmodified. Your general fund balance is about 27%. Your enterprise funds were all operating positive except for sewer. The only two findings that are in the very last page of your report will be, because you're a member of the electric co-op, electric cities, you can only, you're limited in how much you can transfer from electric to general. And that computation is done by looking at your fixed assets. The $2,300 that you transferred above the computation, when Amy's doing the computation for the budget, this audit's not finished. You know, when she did it back in May, she was using an audit that was a year old. So she did the computation based on the audit she had in front of her at the time. You know, the audit got presented this time last year. At that point, you know, the number that she needed to do the computation caused her to miss it by $2,300. I mean, not a big deal. In theory, though, once you get the audit, you're supposed to go back and look at that and make sure you don't over-transfer. So again, it's $2,300. You know, a budget this size, that's kind of minor, but you know what happened there was you were working off a year-old audit report. And then the bond. So those are your two findings. Outside of that, starting about 3 years ago, the LGC quit issuing you all a white letter. They used to get your audit report, they'd analyze it, they'd write you a letter and tell you things they thought you needed to be on the lookout for, or warn you about. What they did 3 years ago was put that in our court, and they make us plug your numbers into a spreadsheet, and if it spits out performance indicators, they want us to make you aware of things so that they don't become issues. So you did have a few performance indicators this year. One of them being general fund balance. And again, they came out, when they changed and wanted us to issue the performance indicators, for some reason that first year, their suggested limit was 32%. It had always been 24. So again, you're at 27. So one of your performance indicators is, keep an eye on your fund balance. They're recommending 32. Your electric fund cash flows, they plugged that in, and it was looking like, if you look at your current assets minus your current liabilities, you were just below 14. They wanted it to be a certain percent, and which one that shows how much it changed? Okay, they want to see a 16% liquidity. And you all were at 8, you changed your rates in the electric fund a couple of years ago, it's gotten up to 12, this past year it was 14%. So you're just about to be back to that 16%. But that happened, you all got some debt paid off in the electric fund, you modified your rates. So again, this issue, by next year's audit, should be gone. Because you've been looking at it for 3 years, and like I say, you're at 14.4%, they want you to be at 16, you're real close. And then the other 3 general fund performance indicators were the bonding that we mentioned. Again, it's always been, have your finance officer covered for $50,000. They issued a state statute change in January that said, you must be covered for 10% of your annual budget. Again, you've corrected that at this point. Your audit's supposed to be submitted by December 1st. We historically, we do so many of these, we have y'all on the calendar to come in and do your audit in November and December, and we usually present it right now. So we don't push Amy to be ready any earlier. It's just our workload. So this is sort of on us. Really, we just sort of have y'all pegged in to perform the audit in November and December and have it submitted. A lot of times we can get it in by December 31st. This year we spilled over Christmas just a little bit. And then the third item was the electric fund transfers. So again, the items mentioned here, looking at the town of Farmville and the size budget you have, I think you've got a good audit report. Everything's in good shape. Look at your fund balance as you do your new budgets, and I think revaluation and property taxes are going to sort of help take care of some of that in your general fund as you move into the new year. But overall, I think you've got a clean bill of health and a good audit report with minimal findings.
Can you take questions now?
Sure, absolutely.
Would you like to go down the line, or you just want to shoot from the hip? Who wants to go first? Mr. Smith, you got that look.
I just want to ask you one question. It looks like on the next page you have, it says minimum threshold 34%, and I thought you said 32%.
It's 34, I'm sorry.
34%?
It's 34.
Okay. Because you said,
Yeah, I said 32, yeah.
Okay.
I bet it's 34.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Anybody else?
And our current, number for that is a 27.2.
Yes.
How much money gap does that represent, or is there a figure that you can say that gap is?
Well, so the 34% would represent 4 months.
Right.
The dollar value that y'all have is $2.8 million of unrestricted fund balance. And what you do is your general fund expenditures are $6.6 million. So you take that available fund balance, divide it into your total expenditures for the general fund, and that's how that percentage is calculated. So the 27%, you know, you got 3.5 months. I mean, you don't quite have your 4 months. But if you look in the, you got a reference tab in the back of your report there, and those numbers are on that, the numbers that go with the chart are in the back.
Okay.
So if you look at chart 1's numbers, you can see the total fund balance is 2.8, and then your general fund expenditures, and of course, those numbers actually go to my conservative, let me see this actually. Okay, the numbers in your report actually compute to the 20.35. The LGC, I do a very conservative approach, and I adopt some things against you that the LGC doesn't. If you take some fund balance and use it to balance your next year's budget, you know, a lot of times you do that to get your budget balanced, but you may not actually incur that. So they don't count it against you. I assume the worst and assume you might use it. You have some funds that, so my number is just a very conservative number. So the 27 number is their computation, but it's done on a similar format.
So as we're doing our budget going forward, if we want to try to bring that number, say we want to get it all in next year, and I'm not saying we will, but what, in total dollars, what are we talking about?
You dropped that 700,000, so that will take you back. Probably 700,000 to 800,000. I mean, you incurred a $700,000 deficit this year that actually dropped you from the 35 to the 27. So you'd have to really come back up probably a $700,000 surplus, if you would, to get back. Because yeah, I think it was 760. 760. Yeah, 760 dropped you. So somewhere in the $700,000 range as a surplus, it's what it would take to get you back there all at one pop if you tried to do it all at once. And like I say, we got David to give us a list of some of the things that you had, you know, spent money on, you know, knowingly, and where's the list? Yeah, you had an updated employee pay classification study that, you know, when everything was implemented, that was $375,000. You had some of this stuff was last year and this year, but you spent money on playground equipment. You've done storage buildings at the baseball field, $140,000. You've done a lot of town hall renovations. And then your streets, you spent like $160,000 on streets. But there's probably $600,000 or $700,000 worth of things you incurred in this past year that was those type items.
Most of them are non-recurring.
Well, the salaries will be recurring, but you had the first full year of implementing it. The other stuff was not recurring. Yes, that's correct. About half of that $700,000 is non-recurring.
And really that 700,000, that represents 1% of our total assets value, 70 million?
Yes, 70, yeah. That's right, 70 million. But that's across all funds now. I mean, that's across all funds, and then we're just, when we're talking about fund balance, we're just dealing with the general fund.
But you can physically put your hand on every dime of it that was spent. Is that fair?
Yes, oh, yeah.
You can actually touch it and see it. Okay.
Well, unless y'all got any more questions for Carly. We do appreciate Amy's help. And David said, I mean, we couldn't do it without Amy. Amy has it in good shape. And us being here reporting in January is not because of Amy. I mean, that's just, we don't schedule our audit to come in and even try to do it until usually about Thanksgiving. Because a lot of times we're here when they're doing the Christmas dinner. And I don't really plan it just so I can eat a steak, but we do. That's not Amy's fault that you're getting it turned in December and January. But it has been accepted by the LGC, so y'all can take action to, accept it as presented.
I'll be looking for a motion to approve this audit.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Dr. Hobbs has made a motion that we approve the audit. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Jay, Carly, thank y'all so much for what you do. Certainly do appreciate that. It means an awful lot. And moving forward, that's one of those things that, after you get home and you digest it and you got any questions, feel free to call Town Hall and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Do our best. Well, Chief, you ready? Come on down. Chief Tommy Rady. He has got his fire department report, and that's going to be pretty intense because these guys are moving about every 6 minutes, I think, and this will be for information only, and I thank you for that. Dr. Hobbs, would you see that town manager gets one of these and trade it to Commissioner Harmon, and well, I would get him to forward what's in here to the county. I'll let you do that, please. Sir, the room's yours.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, pleased to present the 2024 annual report for Farmville Fire Department. This one pretty much going to skim over it. I gave it to you so you can read at your pleasure. But the biggest thing is that once again we had an uptick in our calls. We had a down year last year. You say we went back up again this past year. About 465 total calls for service throughout the year. Ranges over many different aspects. I do have some graphs in there showing how it breaks down. But our leading structure fires were about 52 for this past year, which is a steadily sort of stable for our structure fires over the past 5 years. Our EMS related calls have skyrocketed this past year, up to 210 total. And of those, 74 are just automobile wrecks of that category. The biggest one in that category is assist EMS, which anything they call us for, which is from lifting to driving, any assistance they need while on scene dealing with patients. One of the biggest things they do call us for is codes, and I separate that out separately. Last year we only had 8 cardiac arrest events that we assisted EMS on. And of those 8, we had 3 saves that were transported to the hospital in stable condition. Now, when they got to the hospital, it could be a different story, but they left the scene and were transported, so they were stable enough to move. And so far this year, in 2025, we've already got 2 saves that we've had already. So we're already hoping we don't have that many more of them this year, but we're already on the same pathway this year so far. I broke it down also so you can see in some of the graphs throughout, and I'm jumping around in it because it's sort of all a lot of data. I even broke it down between the rural and the town responses.
Tommy, would you be so kind as to give the board the title on each page? The pages are not numbered, and
oh yeah, they're not numbered.
Just give me the title of it.
Well, as you can see on it's about the department, you'll see 3 graphs with some color on it. This shows our busiest day of the week was this past year was a Tuesday. Our busiest month was the month of October, and our busiest time of the day throughout the whole year was actually between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is kind of odd to be right in the middle of the afternoon. But the previous year we were at, right, I think it was the 2 o'clock time frame. This year we had 2 hours worth of the busiest time frame. And moving on to the next page, it just breaks down to 5 years of our data. Over the past 5 years, you can see on the graph that 2022 was our busiest year, and we've steadily been increasing. We had a drop in 2023, but last year we picked it back up. And that's a lot of calls being done on a volunteer basis. That's the biggest thing. We do have a daytime staff person during the day to help get the trucks out, but after hours is all done by volunteers. On the next page, you'll see your breakdown of how our calls are classified through the National Fire Incident Reporting System. They're all coded when we put them in, and that's how you see the breakdown of how I say we got the fire calls, our EMS-related calls, service calls, good intent calls, and it breaks down actually the number of each one we had on that graph below. And as we go into the next page showing the rule in the town, it's what it coincides. Our 200 calls are up. A lot of that assist EMS calls are in town. Our 700 calls are false calls, fire alarm systems. Most of our businesses in town have a fire alarm system. So that's when we had those false calls, that's why those numbers are up compared to the rule. But like I said, our wrecks do go up in the rule because we had the interstate. That's where the large majority of our wrecks are at. And that's what it breaks down, just more or less on the EMS calls. It was our highest one what we had last year to break down the difference between the town and the rural area. The town with the nursing home, unfortunately, with the nursing home, the aging population, assisted living, that's where we have a large majority of our EMS calls that we assist with. And of course, most of our codes fall in that same area, than being in town. Like I said, our wrecks, we do have wrecks in town, don't get me wrong, but a majority of our wrecks are in the rural area, in the higher speed areas. And as we move to the next one, over the past 5 years, our wrecks and our wrecks have definitely increased over the past 5 years in the rural area, especially that coincides with the interstate. I mean, with the higher speeds, a lot of traffic going to Greenwood. Even on the back roads, 264 alternate, people getting off, it's just where the traffic's going. And of course, over the past 5 years, our busiest day was on Wednesday. So middle of the week tends to be our busiest time. And even over the past 5 years, you can see our busiest time is at 2 o'clock time frame. It's just that mid-afternoon. Like I said, which is odd because people are at work, school's in, and it's still the majority of our calls. As we move to the mutual aid aspect, it shows our graph for our mutual aid aspect. The majority of our calls are being handled by ourselves. It's when we get the structure fires, is when we get mutual aid, when we go to mutual aid calls, and some wrecks of our neighboring agencies. This is changing quite a bit with the landscape of the personnel issue in the daytime staffing and all the time staffing, pretty much on the volunteer side, where we're seeing ourselves go to a lot more calls for service for anything because of response levels of neighboring agencies, as well as ourselves on some calls. Sometimes you just need help. We've gone to Bell Arthur and Fountain for assist EMS because they needed more help than what they had to show up. And we've had more people come to us on structure fires because we didn't have enough show up for what it needed to be done.
So you define mutual aid as when another fire department or another emergency operation has to help you?
We call another fire department, or we go to another fire department for assistance. Following on next, it goes into our training. Over the past 5 years, our training has definitely gone back up this year. This year we had a total hours of 5,148 hours of training throughout all the members of the fire department. Over 3,600 of those hours were certified firefighter training, driver operator, specifically for fire service training. A lot of times we have training hours also comes when we do pub ed events like at the school. We have somebody at the fire station. We don't necessarily count it, they're not counted as certified fire training hours. We had to have specific fire training hours as counted and certified in the state, at the state's classification. We had numerous people this year complete because of our increase of EMS calls, we've had an additional 5 people this past year get their EMT certification. They went to class just to gain the knowledge because we're going on so many EMS calls to be able to help out a little bit more. There's large more times we're helping in the back of the truck. We're riding that truck with the EMS to the hospital. We drive it as well. But having that extra knowledge helps EMS out on the scene, just the extra pair of hands and actually know what they're doing. Ain't necessarily got to tell them everything, just want to know what they can do at their level, which is a basic level, which is predominantly is you're passing things to them that they're at their need. Moving on to what happened in the fire department, it's just just a synopsis of when we gauge on fire calls, we gauge property value and what we think losses are. Our pre-incident value this past year of things we involved in was $8.9 million. We had a fire losses estimated about $1.1 million, and so we have a saved value of a little over $7.7 million. Like I said, that's estimation of what we estimate things to be worth, houses and vehicles and everything across the board. Especially when it comes to property and contents of a house, we have a house fire, everybody's belongings and all that kind of stuff. And the cost that Mike would have to replace it. The graph below, you see the little line graph. I graphed are pretty much our main ones, our structure fires, our assist EMS, and cardiac arrest and wrecks, which seems to be our main cause. And you can see the cardiac arrest have definitely made this downward slope in 2024, but everything else is pretty much maintained on a steady plane. And then as we go into just to show, the next page just talks about the department itself, shows about some of our awards that we had this year. Recognizing our members. Our Officer of the Year was John Wells, who responded to 94% of our calls. Firefighter of the Year was William Justice. Our most certified hours and training hours total by officer was Chris Turnage, who had 500 total hours of training, and then 419 was certified. And then as a firefighter, Valerie Mealy had 499 hours of training, and 430 of those were certified, which is a lot. That's a lot of. Both of them attained their EMT this past year, so that's 280 hours of that they had dedicated to just that class. Of course, our Officer of the Year this past year was Ricky Ellis, and our Firefighter of the Year was Eric Hudson. As we see planning for the future on the next page, it talks about some of our ongoing needs assessments that we have in the fire department, and some of it is been there and they're sort of stair-step on top of each other. Number one is we'd love to see a third-party strategic plan done for the fire department and the future needs of the fire department and the town of Farmville as it's related to each other. Especially going from a majority volunteer base to heading to a more combination base at some point. Of course, the facility needs is there as station facility for the fire department itself, as well as a training facility need is there for the help with the needed training, required training we have for the ISO requirements. It's hard to get facility training, and that's a hot topic when the ISO process we have every 5 years. We rely on having to get facility training at other places because they consider facility training being done in a 3-story tall facility, and so it's got to be a training tower to be classified as facility training. So we rely on going to other agencies like Greenville. We've gone to Wilson, we've gone to Beaufort. Individuals have gone and got training to help get that training hours for that. But in long lines with the facility is the aging apparatus, but that goes on top of the facility side of it. It's hard we can't really replace apparatus until we have a facility, so our apparatus will continue to get older, which incurs more maintenance costs, which we did find this current year, 2024, going into this current budget year, we've seen the maintenance costs rise dramatically on our equipment, our fire trucks. But like I said, there's only one of them less than 15 years old at this moment. So they all have a lot of age on it. And it just shows that we know we need some extra, at some point, need to start thinking about the replacement cycle for them. And one of the main ones that we noticed over the past year, we had the daytime staff person Monday through Friday. But throughout the past year, I've been actually looking at it, and the need is actually pushing us to go 7 days with a paid person, just to help alleviate the volunteer base, because we've got to guarantee the truck gets there. We had a couple instances this year on structure fires that we struggled to get more than one truck to a structure fire. We had some people show up, but we actually need the trucks too. So having to guarantee that we get the trucks we need to the scene, it's definitely been a increase in looking at the data. Our Saturday and Sundays are now in the top 5 of the 7-day-a-week calls for this past year. So it's definitely pushing that way, and that's my plan. We're running the budget process is trying to stretch that paid person to the 7-day daytime hours. It's just when you're dealing with volunteers, it's the only days off they get up there work Monday through Friday, the only days they get off Saturday and Sunday. So a lot of times they are doing other things as well. So it's a catch-22 any way we go. But that's some of the ongoing needs assessments we track throughout the year. And on the last page is a synopsis of our calls. This was published on our Facebook page as far as our calls and the percentage of increases over the past years. I know it's a quick synopsis of it. If you get into it and have any questions, please feel free to ask me, get up with me. Is there anything I can answer at this moment?
I would like for the board to answer any questions, because unless you absolutely positively need this, unless you got some more, I could use about a half a dozen of these between now and tomorrow morning.
I got a few more.
If I could get my hands on that, and I mean, if the board, if you don't want to take it with you and you just leave it with me, I could use about a half a dozen of those. It's real important, and you know the deal there. Any questions or comments? Chief, I want to thank you for what you do. You guys and our friends in Fountain and our friends in Belle Arthur also, you helped them on 105. I just figured that you were there 105 times. Great fire departments at night. Great folks in both of those locations, but in the daytime they depend on you so much. And 105 times you answered the call, and I thank you for that. And I'm really impressed with the training also. And so, board, do you have any questions or anything? Board, got anything? Mr. Flanagan, you got anything? Mr. Smith?
I would just echo what you said. You know, I know you guys, it's a lot being a volunteer fireman, and y'all do a lot. We appreciate it as a town board.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your time tonight and listening to me.
Thank you. Good luck. And I can count on that whistle going off about 5 after 6 every day. Thank you. Thank y'all. I certainly do. Last report, about 80% of the first responders were volunteers in the country, and that was the last report I got on that. That brings us down to item 6, consideration for a final agenda for the annual Board of Commissioners Planning Retreat. Mr. Toskins, you got this?
Yes, sir. What you have in your packet is substantially like the one that you saw at the last meeting. There's been a couple of changes from that thing. Mainly on the second day, we decided to forego a couple of things that we had done, mainly to bring the two new commissioners last year up to speed. We don't feel, in talking with the folks that had given that last year, that it isn't really enough to bring some of these people in to spend a lot of time on what they're doing, and we can sort of update you as it happens. So we did change a little bit on the second day, make it more of a goal setting session. But the other things have just sort of shifted here and there, mainly times and things. So this would be your final agenda if you so choose to endorse it.
Board, could I get a motion to accept this agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Commissioner Smith has made a motion that we accept the final agenda for the annual Commissioner Planning Retreat. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item K is your budget calendar. That's for information only. That brings us down to citizen comments. Citizens, what that is, if there's anything that happened here tonight, anything you may not have heard, any questions about anything that's been on this agenda item here, is an opportunity for you to ask and get clarification on it. Does anybody have any comments or any questions about anything that you've seen tonight? If so, feel free. Anybody have any questions? Anybody? Seeing none, I want to thank y'all for coming tonight and being here, because we will be going into closed session. I'll need a motion to go into closed session for North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11a, parentheses 6, and that is the personnel manager. Can I get a motion?
Make a motion, we go into closed session.
Commissioner Evans has made a motion. We go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank y'all for coming tonight.